Dr. Israetel here for the third installment in our series about the top priorities for nutritional success in body composition alterations. So today, we're going to talk about macronutrient requirements. And just a real quick sort of reminder, it's going to be a bit of a short talk. I'm going to leave out a lot of stuff. Why? Because there's lots to talk about. So if you feel like I'm sort of ripping you off in this talk, I kind of am, because we're just going over the most important basics. However, hopefully we'll circle back around, get much more in-depth later on as we get deeper into these talks. So, just to summarize some things, the top priorities for body composition change are calories in versus calories out, which we covered last time, and macronutrients are number 2. That means they're still very important, much more important than nutrient timing, and food composition follows. Kind of to illustrate that, calories in, calories out accounts for most of the variance in diet success. However, macronutrients behind, but not too far behind. So still very important, and then of course we have nutrient timing and food composition there, kind of trailing the pack. So macronutrients, very important to consider in a diet. Let's look over some basics really quick. First of all, any given goal of of sport performance enhancement or body composition has a certain given optimal amount of calories. There's kind of an optimal number of calories with which any one person should be putting on mass, or losing fat, or maintaining their body weight. So given that, once calories are decided and fixed, we move down and try to set in stone the macronutrients more. So they always come after calories have been decided. And optimal amounts of macronutrients need to be eaten based on physiological need. So we don't just make these up from thin air or just fill in the blanks. There are actual physiological needs for how much protein, carbohydrates, and fats a person has to have once we know their calories, and then we sort out the nutrients from there. Now, more of one nutrient, because our calories are set, necessarily means less of the other. So the sort of old bro science adage of, well, why not just eat more protein? There's a very good reason of why not right off the gate. Because our calories are set, more protein means probably less carbs or fats or both. If we have optimal amounts to hit of those nutrients, more of one is not necessarily a good thing because it necessarily means few of the others. So let's look at the physiological background and try to figure out how much protein, carbs, and fats we need in that order. Protein. Probably the most important nutrient for body composition. Why? Well, protein, first of all, builds muscle, directly supplies anabolism, and second of all, spares muscle. It's the most powerful muscle spare nutrient there is. So if you want to build muscle and keep it, protein is your ticket. Per day, we're just going to talk about per day, nutrient timing within the day is the next talk coming up. Per day, most individuals who are engaged in regular physical activity and want optimal body composition change need between 0.6 and 1 gram per pound of body weight per day. What does that mean? Well, it means that for a person who weighs 200 pounds, that means they need between 120 grams and 200 grams of protein per day. That varies. That's a really big variance in there. What determines it? Well, two primary things. First of all, leanness. If you're 5% fat at 200 pounds, it means you have a whole lot of muscle and very little fat. You're going to need more protein because protein is primarily determined based on how much muscle mass you have. If you're 40% fat at 200 pounds, you may need closer to 120 grams of protein. Not very much protein at all because you just don't have that much muscle. And also, training volume. If you're undergoing a very high training volume, very high volume hypertrophy program, you're going to need more protein than somebody that's doing maybe a powerlifting peaking template where they're doing 3 sets of 3. They don't change tissue much, they don't need as much protein. What about more protein? What about 1.5 grams per pound of body weight? I'm sorry, I can't put this in any more clear way. The literature just doesn't support that much protein. If you want to eat more, fine, but it's going to have to come at a trade-off of all of the other nutrients. Next, carbohydrates. Why carbohydrates? Why not just low carbon? Well, carbs are critical for growing the most muscle you can in several distinct ways. First of all, carbohydrates directly provide energy for training, mostly via glycogen. Second of all, carbohydrates are really anti-catabolic. They prevent muscle loss primarily while you're training if you consume them. And also, mostly via insulin, carbohydrate consumption directly stimulates muscle growth. Very, very powerful things. We don't want to cut completely unless we're doing very exotic something or other kind of goal. Per day, the recommendations of carbohydrates are quite varied, anywhere from 1 to 3 grams per pound of body weight on average, depending on your goal. It's really, really goal dependent. Right. Last but not least, or actually sort of least, are fats. Why do we eat fat? So first of all, they're needed in the diet for health and sort of optimal physiological function. Fats are great as a calorie buffer. If you want to gain weight and you need to eat 4,000 calories a day, good luck eating that on a low-fat diet. Fats are easy to eat, they sit well in the stomach, they don't provide a lot of GI distress, and they have a ton of calories per gram. However, their needs for the athlete or for body composition are much less clear than protein or carbohydrate. It probably seems like 10 to 25 grams per day of fats for most athletes or most people doing body comp change are needed for essential fats just for sheer health and physiological function. Past that, there's quite a bit of variance. So we know protein is really set in stone. Carbohydrates are based mostly on activity and goal. Fats are mostly based on calories or filling in the rest of the calories that the two other nutrients haven't filled in. Now, a couple of real-world tips sort of to close out this really general discussion. If it fits your macros, it seems, because it covers the calories and the nutrients, is a really good way to start a sound diet. It's a very good start. It must be said, however, that it is not a complete picture for the advanced athlete. So if you're just starting out in scientific dieting, if it fits your macros, it's a very good way to go. If you're an elite competitor, you've got to think a little bit beyond that. Bro science attack coming up, so sorry if I offend anybody. If you're eating 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, you're probably eating too much protein simply because you could be having more carbs and grow more muscle and train harder and recover faster. Of course, more protein doesn't hurt. We know that in people with healthy kidneys, you can eat as much protein as you want for years on end and nothing happens. But how much carbohydrate do you have to cut out of your diet to still meet your calorie needs? How much fat do you have to cut out? Is it optimal to be cutting out that much other nutrient? The answer is probably not. So if you stick to the amount of protein that's really justified in the literature between 0.6 and 1 gram per pound of body weight, you can be optimizing your carb intake and your fat intake and be all around better for body composition. So, tons and tons of protein? Sorry, just bro science, not actual science. Last but not least, because carbs are so critical for growing muscle, preventing muscle loss, and giving you the energy you need to train hard, super low carb diets for too long are really not the best idea. If you do low carb dieting for a very long time, you're going to pay with performance and you're going to pay with muscle. So carbs or diets that cut out carbs right away and all of them, probably not the best idea, not the best approach. All right, that's all I have for you guys this time. Next time we'll be talking about nutrient timing. See you then.